Welcome back to Hardball. Speaker Nancy Pelosi is preparing to deliver those articles of impeachment to the Senate, allowing the president's trial to move forward. In a letter to her Democratic colleagues today, Pelosi said, I have asked Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler to be prepared to bring to the floor next week a resolution to appoint managers and transmit articles of impeachment to the Senate. Pelosi will consult with her caucus on Tuesday coming up, which means, according to the New York Times, that the Senate's proceedings could begin as soon as Wednesday. Amid all this, the debate continues over the fairness of the proceedings, namely whether the Republican-led Senate will even hear from witnesses or move to suppress new evidence or to shut the whole thing down. But an encouraging sign today, somewhat encouraging, a key Republican senator opened the door to allowing witness testimony. Senator Susan Collins of Maine told the Bangor Daily News up there that she's working with a, quote, small group of Republican senators to ensure that witnesses can be called to trial. I'm joined right now by Yamiche Alcindor, White House correspondent for the PBS NewsHour. Noah Bookbinder is executive director of Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics. Glenn Kirshner, of course, former federal prosecutor. Let's go to Glenn. Who blinked?
Who blinked? Some might say Speaker Pelosi blinked. But, Chris, let's look at where we are today.
Well, then again, let me fight with you immediately.
Go ahead.
She made her point.
Bring it on.
She never could do more than make her point. Yeah. She never could do this for months. So it was always going to be a short string of days she had. Did she push it to the limit, beyond the limit, or what? Well,
where are we today that's different from where we were the day the House voted on the articles? One, we have Bolton saying, you know what? I'll testify. Two, we have Senator Collins saying, I've consulted with a small group of senators, and I am
we need four.
And I am hopeful that we'll get to a point where I'm not saying it's cause and effect, that the Pelosi delay necessarily led to that. But let's face it, we've been discussing the fairness of the trial. This delay has given us an opportunity to talk about how a trial without witnesses is like democracy without voting. It ain't. So I think we're in a better place now for the Pelosi delay.
Yamiche, as he does often, Mitch McConnell tried to do some mansplaining. And all the time, he didn't say nagging, he said haggling. But he was basically saying, okay, lady, get back in your lane.
What you just said is essentially the Democratic point of view, that they held on to these articles.
We didn't start with that. He started by saying she blinked.
Well, that is true. That is true. The latter part of what you said is what the Democrats will say, which is that they wanted to have this long conversation. But most Republicans and most Democrats that I've talked to say Nancy Pelosi knew who she was dealing with. She knew she was dealing with Mitch McConnell. She knew that he wasn't going to really give anything big to hold this back. They really just wanted that national conversation. So in some ways, this is still going on largely on the terms that Mitch McConnell wanted, but he did have to now answer to his fellow Republican senators who are now saying, wait, what does John Bolton have to say? But of course, Senator Collins, and I would also add in there Senator Romney, they're both saying it would be nice to hear from Bolton, but neither one of them are saying I'm definitively not going to move forward with this trial if we don't have witnesses, which is what Democrats want them to say, and they're not doing that yet.
Well, I've said recently, that, not to quote myself, but it was pretty good. I said that Mitt Romney flirts with greatness. He flirts with it, but he doesn't marry it. To stand up and say to this president, I want witnesses, damn it, or I'm going to keep demanding them all 2 or 3 weeks of this trial until we get some witnesses. He could do that. He's a senator.
He could do that. He could do that. But what we've seen is Republican senators really walk up to the line on all sorts of issues, whether it's Brett Kavanaugh, whether it's the Senate trial. You've seen Republicans have kind of a sprinkling of standing up to the president, a sprinkling of standing up to Mitch McConnell, but then they always stop short. Some people would say that that's politics. They're worried about their base and getting reelected. Some people say maybe that's also Mitch McConnell showing that he has control of his caucus.
He cracks the whip.
And, that he cracks the whip, and they listen.
Well, Democrats are eager to hear from former National Security Advisor John Bolton, who's expressed his willingness to testify under subpoena. However, in a Fox interview today, President Trump signaled he will try to prevent that from happening.
Why not call Bolton? Why not allow him to testify? This thing is bogus.
I would have no problem other than one thing. You can't be in the White House as president future. I'm talking about future, many future presidents, and have a security advisor. Anybody having to do with security and legal and other things.
You're going to invoke executive privilege?
Well, I think you have to for the sake of the office.
You know, it's amazing how he does this. No, he acts like he really meant it. Like he cares about the future of American governmental institutions. I don't think so. But here's the question. Can you have, given the precedents, a trial without witnesses?
I mean, you really can't. The Senate has 15 times in American history conducted an impeachment trial to completion. In every one of those cases, witnesses have testified. In many of them, witnesses who did not testify in front of the House. This would really be breaking new ground in a really unfortunate way.
Well, legally, what happens if the president invokes executive privilege, as lawyers do, and says, I don't want my national security advisor talking about national security? Then it goes to the courts. And they play for time. You can't hold up does anybody have any idea what you do? Can you hold up the trial till you get a court ruling on John Bolton's testimony?
It sounds like I could be the way I feel and the way that my sources tell me. It's really kind of uncharted ground. But for the most part, the White House has had this stance that they think everything's privileged. But you still had people like Army Lieutenant Colonel Vindman walk in there and say, "I don't really care what the White House is saying. I'm going to go forward." So I think John Bolton could be in a situation where
not working there anymore.
Exactly. If he can say, "Look, this is what I can tell you without breaking classification, without talking about privilege. I was really concerned about some of the things that I saw." And by the way, a lot of his deputies, a lot of the aides that he sent up to warn the White House lawyers, they've all kind of said this is what John Bolton believes. So in some ways, they could really just ask him, is what Fiona Hill was saying, your aide in the National Security Council, was she correct when she said that you were really angry at this and that you didn't want to be part of what you were calling a, quote, drug deal? Those could be simple yes or no answers that don't have to get into any new ground.
Well, let's talk about human behavior. Could it be, I don't know Bolton personally, I know his politics, his ideology, but could it be that he says, you know, I thought for a while I wanted to save some of the goodies, the gems here for my book, because people do that. People like to write the big story, the big news. But he said, you know, if history comes down, that I sat on this stuff for a year while we didn't have a real trial, I'm guilty of really withholding my citizenship here.
Exactly. If he had blockbuster evidence and he doesn't testify, and then he puts in a book information that could have changed the course of a Senate impeachment trial, he will go down in history as a traitor and a villain.
Yeah. Well, in December, you said it well. He didn't like hearing that either. Anyway, the Washington Post reported that Senate Republicans were seeking a short trial, possibly 2 weeks, before holding a vote on the president's fate. Even if they begin the proceedings, by the way, at the earliest possible date next Wednesday, that would leave less than 3 weeks until the president delivers his State of the Union address. Yet today, Senator Mitch McConnell wouldn't say whether his goal was to get the president acquitted before the State of the Union.
Do you think it's important to get it finished before the State of the Union and have him acquitted by the time he appears?
Oh, look, we're just getting started. I'm glad we now have the opportunity to do it. And it's been a long wait. I'm glad it's over. What do you make of this? Because we all know what a State of the Union looks like. The Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, who's leading the charge on impeachment, has gotten it through the House. The president's under trial in the United States Senate, and we're all going to watch the president come in, you know, with the usual one half of the chamber cheering him, the other one sitting on their butts, right? It's going to be worse than ever this time.
It's going to be interesting, and I think that the White House really just wants this to be over as soon as possible. All the sources that I talked to, even though they were saying for months and months and months that President Trump was going to welcome being impeached, he hates this part of his legacy. He wants this to be over. He wants to be able to take the victory lap to say, look, they tried to get me out of my office, and by the way, I'm not here. He wants to almost maybe deliver that line at the State of the Union. Will he actually be able to do that? Who knows? But I think that's definitely what the president wants to do.
Well, the mobsters always come out. No, they come out the courthouse steps. They've just won a case, maybe on a technicality. They've squeaked through, and they come out. I'm exonerated. I'm innocent. Not just I got off the hook here, but I am clean. I can hear Trump doing that. I can hear that victory lap statement in the State of the Union.
Absolutely. But the problem here is that Mitch McConnell has already stated that he's essentially in the bag for the president. Yeah. And so it's not going to be, if that's how it goes, it's not going to be an exoneration that carries a lot of weight with the American people.
But he'll give that speech and the Republicans will jump up and down like they just won the Super Bowl. Right?
I think you can imagine that the Republicans are going to be cheering him on, saying, you beat this case.